Welcome back, we are continuing with Going Native written by Uncle Sealing.
Going Native, Chapter 3. Devastated. There was really no other word to explain how Marin Elbruck felt. It was like her heart had been ripped from her chest. She had taken a day of leave to clean up the apartment. Ayeng would tease her no matter how well she cleaned, but taking the time to move the dirty clothes into a hamper, bag up all the takeout containers, and putting away what she could would at least mitigate the comments some. She wanted him to see that she could take care of herself and that their 2 years apart hadn't reduced her to some sort of living disaster. The knock at the apartment door gave her a moment of panic. It would be just like him to find a way to show up early and catch her unprepared. Marin booted the last of her dirty clothes under the bed and pranced her way to the door. She flung it open excitedly to find not her pretty purple husband but a large woman in a military uniform. Marin Elbruck. The formally dressed soldier was Boxy, an older woman with her hair pulled back tight and wide shoulders. The uniform was tight enough to show a rather impressive chest over a hint of paunch. Despite being the same height, she made Marin feel small. She had always been less well endowed than her peers, and her more slender frame added to her feeling overwhelmed in her pajamas and bare feet. "I am afraid I have some bad news." Bad news was, of course, an understatement. The soldier explained that there had been an accident at the orbital station. One of the shuttles hadn't managed to fully unlatch from the station, and when it tried to move away, the resulting torque cracked part of a bulkhead. The loading area had been briefly exposed to vacuum, and by the time the rupture was sealed, nearly 24 Shilvati had lost their lives. Marin's husband had been one of those lives. The soldier had explained to Marin, in too much detail, that the air pressure venting from the station must have pushed Ayeng out into space. They weren't able to find his body, but they were able to track his cracked, vacuum-scarred data pad floating in the void. Now that was the only thing she had left of a partner she had loved but had not seen in years. It wasn't until long after the older woman had left that Marin realized that she had never given her name.
What was that all about, you think?
The two humans stood at the glass double doors and watched the large Shilvati soldier walk back to her car, another soldier already opening the rear door for her. It was an impressive vehicle, not quite a van, not quite a truck, not quite a tank. It had a rough, angular look, and the purple steel favored by the Shilvati didn't look quite as garish as it could have.
Hard to say. Probably some military secret. She smelled like one of those interior agent folks.
Well, I think she smelled nice.
You think everybody smells nice?
Think she'll be back?
Let's hope not. Those hard drives she took are coming out of the snack budget.
The man shrugged, then continued.
At least she didn't smash anything. I don't even know what budget a new primary mirror would come out of.
His partner shrugged, then grabbed his hand as they went back inside.
Probably the time to find new jobs budget.
They let out a small sigh.
We should probably be doing that anyway.
Marin was very good at her job. She had been doing data analysis for the military for years, and even if the rank-and-file soldier thought she was just holding down a desk, she knew her work was important. Information was her weapon, and she was an expert marksman, which made her current problems even more frustrating. She had planned to throw herself into her work, try to bury the ache inside her, but the death kept nagging at her. It just didn't make sense. Accidents did happen, of course, but it wasn't on any of the news feeds. When she had requested a few extra days of leave, none of her superiors knew about the incident at the space station. At least, they claimed to know nothing. Trying to find the soldier who had told her about Ayeng's death was another dead end. It was like chasing a ghost. Of course, that ghost did not expect Marin Elbruck. She started approaching the problem obliquely. Sure, the ghost didn't leave any evidence, but her passing did. Marin found a gap in the motor pool requisitions, a ground car that had been unavailable for use during the same time period as the soldier's visit to her apartment, despite there being no requisition or maintenance ticket to explain why it was tagged out of service. Tracing it back, she found a transorbital vehicle that had visited the space station of Ayeng's disappearance. Nothing out of place on the crew or cargo manifests, but some quick math showed that the fuel consumption indicated a mass of full 192 kilograms heavier than the combined manifests. Her ghost looked to weigh about that.
Got you, bitch.
26 hours after receiving the news about her husband, Marin knew Commander Celia Merrick, Shilvati military controller and secret interior agent. More importantly, Marin knew where she had been. Marin had been the first stop the agent had made after examining the station. Losing a husband must have afforded Marin the privilege of a special visit. After that, Marek had traveled from Base 16 to a place completely unexpected. An unusual suborbital flight to the middle of nowhere, a place called Durango, Colorado. Motor pool records showed that the orbital was loaded with a small personnel carrier, and mileage reports on that gave Marin a circle to work out from. As she began to throw some clothes in a duffel for her trip, another knock on the door threw Marin's heart into her throat. She opened the door to find a pile of luggage, hard-shelled lightweight metal with tasteful leather accents. Marin started to laugh. If the goddess was going to send her any sign that Ieng was still alive, having her send his luggage ahead of him was just the sort of thing he would have asked her to do. Samuel opened the door to see a very disheveled-looking Shilvati. They hadn't been expecting anybody, and seeing the rental van coming up the winding path did not prepare him for the reality of seeing his second alien in as many days. While the first one was a broad, tough, no-nonsense type, this one looked rough. There were bags under her eyes and her hair clearly hadn't been brushed in days. Her clothing was hanging on her loosely and her posture was terrible. Before she could open her mouth to speak, an arm shot past Samuel's shoulder and grabbed the Shilvati by the wrist.
"Oh, you poor thing. Get in here and let's get you settled."
Samuel turned to the side as the unkempt indigo Amazon was pulled bodily into the room by his partner. Watching 5 feet of dark skin and bleached hair pull the Shilvati into the room was like watching a tugboat pull a tanker. A confused, exhausted tanker. Moments later, the woman was taking up most of a beat-up love seat in the foyer of the large building.
You look like you need some coffee. Or tea.
The elfin figure looked her in the eyes.
Nope. This is a job for hot chocolate.
They scampered away. Samuel shook his head and plopped down on an adjacent chair, dust puffing out around him.
What just happened?
They'll do that. Just let it happen. Sam likes to mother people.
A faint cry of
I heard that.
came from the break room.
I am here too.
And the woman was interrupted by an enormous steaming coffee mug being stuffed into her hands.
Why do you have Shilvati-sized mugs?
Oh, that's mine.
A hand was thrust out for a fist bump. The hand was as small as the rest of them, connected to a rail-thin body with chocolate-brown skin. Their eyes were shining, thin silver spectacles with thick lenses magnifying the emerald orbs so they seemed to dominate the small, round face. The hair was a bleached blonde puff sticking no more than a couple centimeters from their head.
Sammy Painter Forsyth.
After a moment of pause, the woman released the mug with one hand and returned the fist bump.
Marin Elbrock.
She took a sip from the mug, then released a pent-up sigh.
This is really good.
Yeah, Sammy takes pride in comforting beverages.
Samuel held up his own fist for a bump.
Samuel Forsyth Painter, at your service.
Marin woke up sprawled diagonally across a bed, fully clothed. Looking around, she found a small room with a tiny dresser, a nightstand, a television hanging on the wall, and 2 doors, one closed and the other open, showing a small tiled bathroom. It was like waking up in a hotel. On the nightstand was a pitcher of water, a glass, her data pad, and a note. Marin, you must have been exhausted. Don't worry about spilling the hot chocolate, I'll make you more. Just come upstairs when you're ready. The shower's fully stocked and Sam brought down your luggage. Sam. Sure enough, Ieng's luggage and Marin's duffel were piled next to the door. She wasn't sure why she had packed her husband's things, but it had seemed like a good idea at the time. At least now she felt more put together. Standing up, she realized the ceiling was a bit low, even for a human-built residence. She almost banged her head on the door frame as she made her way into the bathroom and did her best to use the shower. By the time she was dressed and out of the room, she felt awkward and gangly, like she was going through her first growth spurt again. At least she was clean and dressed. It was easy to find the staircase, and from there she just had to follow the voices.
Am I crazy, or did we kidnap a Shilvati yesterday?
Of course not. She needed a nap, you saw her.
Sammy was digging through the kitchen cabinets, nearly waist deep in a lower compartment.
Didn't we have vanilla extract?
It's up here.
Samuel replied.
And I am pretty sure she didn't consent to staying at our little bed and breakfast. I don't think either of us expected her to collapse like that.
He cracked another egg into the batter one-handed and continued whisking.
I looked it up. Shilvati don't have the same stamina curve humans do. They are either on or they are off. Poor girl nearly killed herself by the looks of it.
Sammy snatched the vanilla extract and added it to their own ingredient pile. Samuel stopped stirring for a moment.
Sounds like the water just shut off.
He reached over and turned on the waffle iron.
I just wish we were better prepared. Never met an alien and then one right after the other? We aren't even stocked for human guests.
It'll all work out. It always does.
Sammy said, throwing a saucepan on the stove and adding some milk, sugar, cocoa powder, and the vanilla. Going to the snack cabinet, she pulled out an assortment of chocolate bars.
Which chocolate should I use?
The dark. Throw some cinnamon in there, and maybe cayenne pepper.
You sure?
I was doing some reading of my own. Shilvati tend to like more savory flavors. Besides, you're making it, and you're pretty spicy yourself.
Marin walked in just in time to see Samuel slapping Sammy on the ass. Their bare ass. Her quiet cough brought everything in the room to a stop. The two Sams looked over to see Marin's face flushed dark.
Sam. I think we forgot to get dressed again.
Marin had never had a more confusing morning in her life. First she awakened in a strange place, feeling like a giant, then she walked in on some sort of naked sex cooking game. Some awkward apologies, 2 hastily grabbed aprons, and now she was sitting on a tiny folding chair at a kitchen table eating some sort of breakfast bread and drinking perhaps the single most delicious thing she had ever partaken of with a pair of charming but excitable humans.
I suppose I should tell you why I'm here.
Marin finally said, setting her mug down.
Because of the data.
The one called Sammy replied promptly.
The data we don't have anymore. The data that we were told would get us in big trouble if we shared with anyone or spoke about.
Samuel added.
Oh.
Here was Marin's hope dashed immediately. Everything was falling apart again.
Can we ask why you want it?
Marin pulled in a breath, then looked the two of them over. No fear at the thoughts of being taken care of by the Shilvati government, just earnest curiosity.
2 days ago, the same interior agent who came to visit you visited me. She told me that my husband was killed in an accident at a space station.
Marin heard a quiet,
Oh no.
come from Sammy, and the two humans looked distressed as they listened with rapt attention.
It didn't sound right, so I did some digging and found she visited here after she visited me. To be honest, I'm not even sure what you do here.
Nothing, mostly.
Samuel said, earning him a smack from Sammy.
We're a museum. We have a planetarium, a bunch of exhibits on the history of human astronomy, and our own radio and optical telescopes. We teach classes and collect research data for universities as well.
Sammy was practically buzzing with energy, giving the full sales pitch. Marin couldn't help but give them a glance as the fabric of the apron they were wearing slid up and down their smooth chest as Sammy bounced up and down in their chair.
And the basement room I woke up in.
Samuel looked sheepish and ran a hand through his unkempt hair.
You probably noticed we're in the middle of nowhere.
Once Marin nodded, he continued.
Well, if you want people to be able to visit, they need a place to stay. We have a dozen rooms down there and a restaurant on this floor.
Sammy joined in.
Between schools visiting, our university research contracts, and people coming to use our little venture as a hunting lodge, we are doing okay.
We're doing okay.
Sammy smacked Samuel again, but the man continued.
Nobody really needs the research when Shill physics is at least 100 years ahead of ours and you're willing to share it. Plus the new firearm regulations have really kicked hunting in the butt.
So why would the interior visit here?
Samuel shrugged.
No idea. The lady just took all our hard drives with data from the last week, told us she'd be back if we talked about the data, and left.
The casual ease the two humans seemed to have concerning the possibility of interior agents coming to get them was concerning. Marin wanted to know the truth about Iang's death, but she didn't want to get other people in trouble along the way.
Aren't you scared? The interior doesn't mess around. If they wanted to make you two disappear, it wouldn't be a problem for them.
A large frown appeared on Sammy's face.
But we can't talk about the data. We never even saw it.
Never saw it.
Nope. When we don't have any work going, we set the telescopes to wide field, point them at whatever looks interesting, and record. Hard drive space is cheap and you never know what you might catch. We used to live stream it too, but the Shilvati sent us the very official letter telling us to stop.
Marin frowned. Looks like she had wasted her time coming here.
So you have no idea what you might have recorded.
This time it was Samuel who replied, a big grin forming on his face.
We didn't say that.
He slid his chair back and hopped to his feet, making his way out of the room. Marin followed him with her eyes, seeing a geometric tattoo between his shoulder blades, circles and lines in precise mathematical shapes. She kept staring, working her way down past the neat bow of the apron string.
He's got a nice ass, right?
Marin's head snapped over to see Sammy leaning in close, a mischievous grin splitting their face.
I heard that.
End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and visit the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.